Today on the Workplace Maker podcast, we talk with Paul Butterworth, a strategic technology consultant, about workplace programs and project management from an IT perspective, and what is really important in a workplace design or redesign. What can IT technology consultants add, and what does a workplace program manager need to keep in mind if they are managing the technology component of a workplace program? So I know you'll enjoy this. Fantastic to be able to draw on Paul's 30 years of experience in this space and hear his interesting insights, some of which are about technology and others are about people and communication. So on the Workplace Maker podcast today, we have Paul Butterworth, who is an accomplished technology consultant. He is a program manager and project manager with extensive ICT experience over the last 30 years, mainly in the New Zealand ICT industry. He's established 9 Dots Partners, which is a strategic technology consulting firm with his business partner, Craig Blake. And Paul, I believe you've had that business for nearly 10 years now.
It will be 10 years.
It's about 10 years. It says 2013 in my notes, if that's about right.
2012, 2013, around there.
Yeah, neat. So do you want to give us the kind of flyby view of your career background and some of the positions you've held or projects that you've been involved in?
For sure. So I started life in pure IT, worked for customer IT departments, graduated from there to working for vendors as a systems engineer, and then I probably graduated from pure IT into telco. So I managed to cross-fertilise an original skill and knowledge base in IT with understanding of networks and telco services. I took all those and spun out into a consultancy opportunity and spun up my own consultancy firm in 2004, working to provide technology advice and strategy, and then joined up with Craig in 2012 and we launched in 2013 and we've been going ever since, and now we're about 12 to 14 people.
Fantastic. And so with this broad experience of technology, you've probably come across some stereotypes people have of technology consultants. What's the stereotype and what are things really like?
That's a very good question. So most people probably view, in quote marks, technology consultants as very technical, geeky type people, highly technically qualified. The reality is it's a little less black and white as that. There are shades of it, and some people graduate towards that very technical end, but particularly in 9 Dots, we graduate more towards the business end, where what we're doing is translating technology opportunity to business to help them optimize their use of technology to run their business operations. So yes, there's a generic view, but the reality is quite a bit different.
And then when you're dealing with business, there's all of these complexities that come into play there, aren't there? Like, you think about strategy, business is never black and white either. So, trying to fit something that looks like it can fit within a really neat box into the complexity of business is going to throw up all kinds of challenges, I imagine.
Yeah, there's a natural tension between, in quote marks, IT and the business. IT works in a world where there are thousands of acronyms and lots of technical elements to it. Business, by and large, doesn't really care about that stuff. They just want IT to front up and deliver stuff that works for their business. So getting the two groups together to talk or find a common language where the business can articulate what they want and IT can go, oh, I get that. I'll hide all that complexity from you and I'll just front up and deliver it. Getting the two at a table to talk is actually quite challenging. And often one of the biggest roles we play is to do that interpretation of hearing the business articulate the things that are stopping them from doing their business well, that they might believe are technology related, then talking to the IT department to help them to remove those roadblocks, smoothen things out and deliver really good outcomes for the business.
So you're doing a translation job.
Indeed. Yeah, I'm wearing 2 hats. So if I was the business, how would I understand what IT's saying? I kind of need to rephrase that. If I'm in IT and the business is telling me something and I'm just completely not getting it, then how can I reinterpret that so that IT gets some dawning realization on what business actually wants from them?
Yeah. And is this a nice to have, or how central is it a need to have? Is it a nice to have or a need to have? Do you see that, like, what happens if, because I think what you're saying is relevant to other areas of workplace programs as well, where there's that same translation piece required on people and culture side, sometimes on the property side as well. So how in your work, how central is it that you get that understanding and that translation happens effectively?
Well, it's pivotal. In some IT departments, they understand the need for that business translation, and they'll have people whose role it is specifically to go out to the business, embed themselves in the business, and be an ambassador for the business back into IT to do that. Those tend to be large corporations with thousands of seats. In the mid-range, IT departments can't afford to have somebody to do that. Sometimes the CIO will have those skills, but when they don't, that's when a company like us comes into play, and we can carry that out on an outsourced basis.
Yeah, so interesting. So interesting. So you've been quite busy doing this work and a range of technology programs and projects, and you're working mainly with government clients in New Zealand. How are you finding that clients are prioritizing their spending right now? What's important to them in how they spend their technology budget?
Well, I guess COVID has trumped everything. So IT departments probably pre-COVID would have had a game plan, a key strategy and a roadmap of things they wanted to invest in and build up and deliver to their organisation. COVID's kind of trumped all that. So it's been park anything that's not completely broken and where the fires aren't burning so high we can't ignore it, and just deal with COVID. So they're putting a lot of time and energy and mental focus into providing the tools the business need to work in a distributed manner, in a hybrid manner because of COVID. Any spare time left over after that, then they're looking at what was the old program of work and reprioritising that and working out how much funding they've got, how much resource they've got to do stuff, what's really important. I would say unified comms is really key within the next tier of opportunity, and partly because that does play strongly into COVID. So things like Teams and Zoom and other unified comms products have become absolutely pivotal to people working from home in a hybrid manner. So getting them to work smoothly and effectively without disruption, with good quality, staff trained and able to use and be confident with the products, absolutely key.
Yeah.
After that, I would say probably cloud, big strategy move for most organisations.
Yeah, really linked to that mobility and people working anywhere. So let's unpack that concept of unified comms just a little for anyone who's not from that technology background or doesn't realize that they're using unified comms on a day-to-day basis. What qualifies as unified comms?
That's a very good question. So unpacking that and trying to step away from the technical jargon and terminology. If in a natural sense you would have in the office walked up to somebody, had a conversation around the pod, taken some notes, written a document up and shared it with somebody, how do you then do that when you're working from home off your own broadband? What are the tools and software applications running on your PC, whether it's your own personal one or one provided by the business, that allow you to do the same thing in a digital sense? Now that can be as simple as a mobile phone, allowing you to take telephone calls. But it can also be things like Teams, where you can chat, you can make audio calls as well over Teams, and you can do full video, and you can share and collaborate on documents where you're presenting your document, potentially co-editing it, and it's allowing you to emulate what you might have done walking around the office.
Nice. And so it's that integrated experience of there's no communication need that isn't met by that integrated system, that where every piece kind of talks to each other. So you've got the ability to be able to interact in all of the ways that you normally would.
That's the ideal, and I guess whether that current unified comm space delivers to business needs is arguable. There are some tools that are better than others. There are some people who are more confident and better trained and able to utilise the functionality. There are people who are less confident and struggle with the tools. So part of IT and the business's combined challenges: how do I not only put the tools in place, but how do I make sure my staff are trained, have confidence, and can actually navigate around all the functionality and use it intuitively and instinctively?
Yeah, which is really relevant to workplace design and to workplace programs now. As you said, hybrid is becoming much more the way that organizations are organizing their work and that people are choosing to work. And so there's a huge amount of programs and work happening to reorganize and to establish hybrid in a way that's effective. And for all of us, the last 2 years have been a new experience, and yet we're still drawing on a range of experiences that are relevant to it, and skills and knowledge and abilities from prior to that. So when you think about workplace programs where there's been an element of technology, where the technology has been important, perhaps it's a mobile workplace, a flexible workplace environment, what has been some of the challenges that you've seen from a technology point of view for those workplace programs?
Well, the list of challenges is bigger than the list of wins. And good IT departments obviously are working very hard behind the scenes to hide all those complexities from the business. But in a sense, most people who are having to work from home or work or a combination want to spend as little time on setting up and using the tools as possible, and as much time on doing their job, whatever that job happens to be. So if I'm working at home and I go to flip up my laptop and join a team session to do something, if I can't just do that in a matter of seconds, I begin to get frustrated, and it begins to get in the way of my doing whatever my core job is. If I then leave home and decide I'm going to go in the office for half a day or an hour because I have to, I want to then flip up my laptop, dock to a working station somewhere, and continue on just as I was at home again, without losing any time and energy, without any obstacles getting in the way of doing my job. Now, to some extent, some organisations have achieved that better than others, but there are still instances out there where somebody comes in, sits down at a desk, and it spends a quarter of an hour trying to get connected up before they can do their jobs. But those are impediments. They reduce productivity, they reduce organisational output, they prevent speed of service delivery. So an IT department that understands that will be focused on making that process as painless and as seamless as possible. That it's almost a subconscious. I come in, I sit at my desk, I plug in, and I'm going in a matter of seconds, rather than a quarter of an hour later I'm throwing the PC at the wall because I can't get it connected.
Yeah.
So how do you achieve that? Again, it's about understanding your business community, understanding their ways of working, their work practices, and then providing the tools that fit and match that profile, providing the education, training and support to the user community that they need to get confident with the tools.
And so if a workplace manager is in a situation where they believe that the technology solution for their program is not going to deliver the people experience that you just described, where it's smooth, it's easy, it's quick, then what would your advice be to them about what to do next?
Well, I think communicating that in a clear manner to your IT department and requesting an uplift in capability and experience is probably the key. And I would start from, what does good look like? So if I'm listening to my staff members and they're telling me a thing about what they'd like to be doing, but it's not working for them, document that clearly and objectively, without emotion. Try and describe the difference between what's ideal and what you're experiencing and what you'd like to be addressed. And go and sit down with your IT department and try and put your case to them. Hopefully, if you've got a good IT department, they'll be listening, and they'll pay attention, and they'll try and address and deliver to your needs, and just do it in a very open and collaborative manner.
Yeah, that's great. And so it's interesting that there's some of what we're talking about there is bringing to the surface the experience people are having or likely to have in the new workspace or in the redesigned workspace. And yeah, how effective do you think organizations are at doing that? Because I guess I see a challenge there in that often IT can be resourced to provide X, Y, and Z, work according to that roadmap, as you said, and the people experience, as you said, a great IT team will be paying attention to, is it smooth, is it fast, is it efficient, but where there's a gap there, that it's not that uncommon for there to be a gap, for there to actually be some real challenges.
Yeah.
And it seems like the key input that's needed is is that clarity around people's experiences, and yeah,
Now,
how do you see organizations doing that well? Or
so I guess the first step is if you're a team leader, a supervisor, or a line manager, and you're representing your business unit and your staff who are attempting to do their job, and they feel like they're being held back from technology, and they're telling you that, is build relationships. Go and line up somebody in the IT department that you believe you can connect to, tell a story, and work with collaboratively to try and build something that will have them responding to your needs. Just simply walking down to IT, slapping down a bit of paper and going, this ain't working for me, is not likely to yield you a lot of result. But going and pleading your case that actually your business unit's constrained and being held back and impaired by the technology they're consuming, and putting a case forward about solving that is likely to yield a better result than just simply complaining.
So if you go, hey, we've done this project and we're going to cut over this new CRM, for example, on the 24th, and the business goes, what? You can't do that. That's the day that we're doing this business change. Sorry about that. But if you'd been confirmed with them from the beginning, you'd already know that the 24th wasn't a suitable date.
Yeah.
So this whole business engagement and collaboration and participation in thinking about how the project's shaped, how it's delivered, really, really key. Absolutely key.
Yeah. And what's the thing you said that you said before around what makes the difference between a project where the business raves about it and one where it's delivered it's probably tick the box?
Well, again, it's about that early business engagement and taking the business along on the full journey from end to end. Understanding and reflecting their requirements into the way you're delivering the project. Having them tell you what their business challenges are, having them tell you, what resource availability they've got. They're running a business and you're asking them to free up resource to take part in a tech project. Unless you put a case to them and explain why and what the benefit and value is to them, they're going to go, oh, you're just a drain on my business resources.
Yeah.
If you explain it the way they go, oh, right, so if we do this well, we, the business, get this, this, and this, and this, and it has value to us as a business. It means we can fulfill orders faster. It means we can do a better quality job. It means we make less mistakes and less rework. If they get that value statement, then they're going to shoulder up, roll their sleeves up and go, yeah, we're part of this.
Yeah, nice.
And they'll volunteer information as you go through that sort of steering group process with them. They'll volunteer it as you're explaining the project, as you describe what you're trying to do for them to help deliver them something. They're going to go, you might want to know this. And then they'll put it on the table before you even ask for it.
Brilliant.
So as a project manager, program manager, you're going, wow, thank you for that. That is really useful to know. That influences my methodology, my timing, my sequence, my plans around business comms and business change. So again, it's about those social skills, those soft skills, stakeholder management, comms, listening, really important skills.
And involving people, isn't it? It's actually people. Right from the beginning, getting people involved rather than turning up with a fait accompli that you drop on their desk and say,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Businesses hate surprises, and they particularly hate surprises from IT.
And what do you think are the, I guess the concept I have in mind is like the threshold or the tipping point or maybe the trigger. So what are some of the things that would get an IT team to notice, to stand up and think, oh wow, that's a challenge that we do need to address?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I guess case by case, and it might depend on the culture and makeup of your IT department. But certainly understanding who in IT has an ability to have an influence on decisions made on IT tools and investments will be a starting point. So if you're a business manager, all the way from CO right down through the SLT through to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 managers, if you get to a point where you understand how your IT department ticks, who you can go to, who has influence, who will listen to you, and who will plead your case for you back into the IT department, that's probably the key. So I go and cultivate a relationship, understand how IT ticks, understand who you can pick to go and build your case to.
Nice. And so I understand that we're really talking about influencing now, and yes. you've needed to do quite a bit of this with both your consulting hat on and your program and project management hat on. So are there any frameworks or ways that you think about influencing and how to do that effectively, that you draw on, or are there any authors or tools that you've found particularly useful for someone who isn't used to needing to liaise and influence in that same way?
Well, and again, that's another interesting question. So over the decades, there have been all sorts of fads and tools and crazes that have come up with, I guess, the latest fad in how you can create and develop those social interpersonal skills. There was a guy called Stephen Covey back in, I think, the 80s who came out with a fad, which was the 7 habits of highly successful people. And there's many other ones that are an example. You can be a bit cynical about those tools, but actually if you go into them and try to pull good things out of them that are useful for you to develop your ability to listen, to empathise, to connect, to be able to socially interact with people, then you will earn yourself some skills that will go a long way for you. Whether it's attempting to work with IT as a business representative or IT back into the business, those skills are just generally useful for everybody. So everyone can find their own tool. What works for me may not work for you, and there are many options out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, brilliant. And yeah, you're right. It's fascinating how communication is coming through as such a strong theme. You know, we're talking about the hard nuts and bolts of technology, but we can't get away from the essential importance of great communication. And yeah, I think there's a trap some people can fall into, which you've alluded to, that our technology is simple, right? Because
if only I'd be out of a job.
If only it was, and often if it does look simple, then that's because there's been some excellent work done behind the scenes to make something extremely complicated appear to work like a breeze.
That's the secret sauce.
Yeah. And so let's think a little more around the nuts and bolts and what good looks like for you. If you could design a workplace today that you think would work really well for the people that you're talking to, what you're hearing from organizations, if you could design the technology layer in a workplace design, you had unlimited budget, what would you be looking at? And unlimited is obviously completely unrealistic. But
right, I'm just rubbing my hands for a start.
Right. It might take us to what does really good look like in this day and age.
So I think people work in different ways, and somebody who prefers a laptop may struggle to work with a tablet like an iPad. But there are other people who can do everything off an iPad, totally end to end, don't need a laptop, and can run on the fly with that. So finding the tool that fits is the first key, and being able to source and supply those endpoint devices to the person based on their preference and choice. Number one. Don't tell everybody they need a laptop. If somebody goes, I hate laptops, never want to work off a laptop, all you're doing is making that person sit in an awkward space. They won't do their job that well because they're not comfortable with the tool. Secondly, network is key. Connectivity, wherever you are, whether you're on the road, at home, in the office, if you can't get good network connectivity, you can't work. So IT has to solve and address both local connectivity, Wi-Fi, home connectivity, seamless, smooth, high performance, high throughput. Nothing worse, for example, than a video conference breaking up and pixelating and losing audio. It will just kill your day job. So connectivity is number two. And then even if you get all that right, things will not always go perfectly smooth. So you then need a support capability. If I'm not working and I'm costing the organisation $200 an hour, and I'm down for an hour, and that's happening across the board, then there's a major financial and economic cost to the organisation. So support's key. I need to know I can pick up the phone, send an email or text, and the IT department will come and look at my problem and solve it and get me working back on my proper day job, not sitting back on a couch waiting for network connectivity to come back on again on my laptop to be repaired.
Yeah, great.
Those would be the three key things for me.
Awesome. And do you have any, I think that's really fantastic, just to clarify, for us to really see quite clearly where people's priorities need to be to create good. And do you have any favorite tools at the moment that you're seeing work really well in hybrid work styles? What are your favorite tools?
If I'm honest, I don't think anybody's truly 100% cracked it. Every tool I've seen used in every environment has some level of shortcoming or shortfall and preference. Teams is extremely popular. Microsoft have been highly successful in selling the Microsoft story. It's been adopted in huge volumes. It's become almost an enterprise standard in many places. But there are downsides to Teams. There are some constraints. There are some functional things that I personally find awkward. But it's better than nothing, and it does provide a unified comms tool that will allow you to do most things you want to do reasonably well. Zoom's very popular. Zoom is okay, but it doesn't do some things that Teams does. So really there isn't a nirvana yet. I think we have a bunch of tools that are all evolving and developing dynamically based on technology improvements, better understanding of end user requirements, the change working practices needed around COVID enforced constraints. And I think over the next 3 to 4 years, we'll see all those products incrementally and slowly improve bit by bit to a point where you may not even notice. All of a sudden one day, maybe some of those things that are annoying you about the tool aren't as obvious as they once were.
Yeah.
So I think you need to pick a tool that kind of works for your organization, go with it, because you're not going to tick every single box.
Yeah, really interesting. And I wanted to explore this evolution and change of technology and how the last 2 years have stimulated some shifts, some quite dramatic shifts in the technology. Well, I guess what have been the most notable things for you in terms of how this experience has facilitated technology innovation or hindered it? And I guess, has it hindered it in other ways, or where do you see the shining lights of?
I think rather than hinder, it's actually unlocked potential. I think prior to COVID, we'd been trucking along an accepted corporate way of working. That this is how you do it. People jump in a car, drive to work, sit at a desk. And so if I'm an IT department and I'm spending $100 million a year on staff, then when I'm prioritising, I'm going, well, I'm going to get stuff that sits in a fixed desk workstation environment. COVID has just turned that on its head. So worldwide, there are vendors who have gone back and said, my crikey, if we carry on the way we're going to lose market share and we're going to lose revenue. So we need to understand the way that this dynamic working environment is changing, and we need to get one step ahead. And our R&D labs need to build products in anticipation. We need to put some thought into the human engineering side of it. The user interface and user experience is really important. Usability, as I work from home or work from a hub or work from the office, needs to be seamless. So I think COVID has forced organizations into a transformation-oriented culture, where the R&D effort and thinking and the IP of the company has been invested very heavily in product evolution. So it's been a great thing for technology.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's great. And so any thoughts on where it's going to go, apart from the fact we're going to see things evolve and change more to adapt to hybrid ways of work and the new work styles? Are you hopeful for the future of technology and for the way people are using it and how we can use it in workplaces? And
100%. I think we're getting smarter in what we're doing. I think the tools are building more and more intelligence into what they're doing. There's less and less overt and obvious things you need to do to join a unified comms experience. The number of button clicks and things you need to do to join a conference even 3 years ago, it's less now. People who are engineering these things are anticipating basic human interface preferences, so it becomes intuitive. You're not conscious of it, but you just join and all of a sudden it's working. You go, oh, this is really good. Whereas previously you might have been forced to go and press this button, do that, drop this down and do that. You haven't noticed it's gone away, but subconsciously you've gone, this is a smoother user experience. And I just think we'll see a continued evolution of that.
Yeah, fantastic. So, and our listeners, our viewers are program project managers with workplace responsibility. And so are there any final words that you would have for them as they embark on their journey, or they're trying to potentially correct a ship that's heading in the wrong direction, around what they need to keep in mind about technology in the modern workplace?
Absolutely. Look, if you're going to project or program manage, I guess, a workplace-oriented piece of work, the business is key. At the end of the day, we're only doing this for the business. So it's really important that there be some form of governance reflected back from the business into the project, that they're listened to, that they've got a say in the choices of technology, the way the technology is configured and deployed, and an understanding of how that delivers to their business requirements is absolutely key to success. So I would, if I'm a program manager, I invest in something like a business working group that convenes and contributes to the thinking around the project and the product shape and the product delivery, and things like business adoption, comms, user training, and other support material for users.
Fantastic. Yeah, great point to end on. But I would like to find out one more thing, Paul.
Sure.
What is your favourite meal to eat or cook?
Oh, I'm really keen on a slow cooked shredded beef Italian ragu
That sounds amazing.
on pappardelle. And if you can make homemade pappardelle, I'd go there.
Oh, that sounds so good. Any tips on getting that meat to shred? What's the tip?
Low and slow and long. The difference between 4.5 and 5.5 hours is quite remarkable in terms of the meat tenderness and the ability to shred it.
Nice. I am going to need to get that recipe.
And lots of Parmesan. Parmesan's really key.
Oh, nice. That sounds amazing. Yep, I'm getting hungry.
And a nice wine to go with it, of course.
A good red, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nice. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for joining us on the Workplace Maker podcast and sharing about technology in the workplace. It's been brilliant to learn from you, from an experienced technology consultant, what's really important about technology and how can we set up for success in a workplace program. So I really appreciate that.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
Okay. Cheers, Nita.
Thank you. Bye.